19-year-old Andrea Vasquez was abducted and murdered in what appeared to be a random act of violence in the state of California. She was described as a loving, vibrant, and ambitious young woman who had a promising future ahead of her. She was pursuing a degree in fashion design at Fullerton College. Her friends and family shared that she not only had a genuine passion for this industry, but a natural talent for it as well. Alongside school, Andrea worked at a retail store in a nearby mall. Andrea's family was incredibly close and everyone supported each other. Her parents, Eduardo and Maria Vasquez, were deeply involved in her life and encouraged Andrea to pursue her dreams and work hard. Andrea also had a very strong bond with her sister, Edlyn. In fact, the two were best friends. They were inseparable. Edlyn also went on to play a crucial role during the search efforts for Andrea. The Vasquez family lived in Los Angeles, where they were well known and respected within their community. They were active members of their local church and often participated in community events, which further highlighted their reputation as a kind and generous family. Now, let's fast forward to August 20th, 2023. That night, Andrea and her boyfriend decided to spend a quiet evening together at Penn Park in Whittier, California. The couple had visited this park numerous times in the past. They always went there to unwind and enjoy the peaceful surroundings after busy days filled with work and studies. The couple arrived at the park around 10 p.m. and parked in a secluded area to have a private moment together. The park was mostly empty, with only a few late-night visitors scattered around. The couple sat in their car, talking and enjoying each other's company under the night sky. Then around 11:15 p.m., a young male approached the couple in their vehicle. It was estimated that he was in his late teens or early to mid-20s. The young man was holding a rifle in his hands, and once he got close, he opened fire on Andrea and her boyfriend. Andrea's boyfriend, taken by surprise and in a state of sheer panic, immediately fled the vehicle in a desperate attempt to escape the gunfire and get help. He ran towards the main park area, hoping to find someone to call the police. Meanwhile, Andrea was left behind in the car all alone, vulnerable and defenseless. When her boyfriend returned a few minutes later with a passerby who had called the police, he found blood near the vehicle, but Andrea was gone. It took a few seconds before he realized that the assailant had taken off with Andrea. The Whittier Police Department arrived at the scene within minutes. Recognizing the severity and urgency of the situation, they quickly called for backup from neighboring agencies, including the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and other local law enforcement agencies. A large-scale search operation was launched almost immediately. The search efforts were extensive and involved multiple specialized units. Law enforcement utilized drones equipped with thermal imaging cameras to scan the park and surrounding areas from above. K-9 units were brought in to track Andrea's scent, and ground search teams combed through every possible hiding spot within and around the park. When news spread, the local community also rallied to support the search efforts. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers who heard about the abduction through social media and news outlets joined the search. Flyers with Andrea's picture and details were distributed widely, and social media platforms were flooded with posts urging anyone with information to come forward. Andrea's sister, Edlyn, used the Find My iPhone feature to track Andrea's last known location. The app showed that Andrea's phone was last active in Moreno Valley. Depending on which route you take, it was about 60 miles away. This critical piece of information provided a new direction for the search teams. Following this lead, search teams expanded their operations to Moreno Valley. The area was known for its vast open fields and isolated areas. Investigators informed the public that the terrain proved difficult to efficiently search through. Nevertheless, they continued to scour the area through the night and into the next day. On August 21st at around 11:50 p.m., the search efforts resulted in a major but tragic discovery. Andrea's body was found in a desolate field off Alessandro Boulevard and Merwin Street in Moreno Valley. The exact circumstances of her death were not immediately clear, but the discovery confirmed the worst fears of her family and friends. The site where Andrea's body was found was cordoned off as a crime scene, and forensic teams began their work of collecting evidence. Following the discovery of Andrea's body, the investigation intensified. This missing persons case has now shifted into a homicide one. With the possibility that the unknown killer might strike again, investigators worked swiftly to identify the killer and arrest him, and it didn't take long for officials to arrive at a significant person of interest. Crucial evidence from the site of Andrea's body pointed to a 20-year-old named Gabriel Sean Esparza. This included ballistic evidence from the rifle used in the shooting, which matched the spent cartridges found at the scene. DNA samples collected from the vehicle and the crime scene also played a significant role in building the case against Esparza. Additionally, surveillance footage from the area around Penn Park and Moreno Valley helped trace Esparza's movements on the night of the abduction. Several witnesses from the park, including Andrea's boyfriend, reported seeing a white pickup truck matching the description of Esparza's vehicle lingering around the park around the time of the abduction. On the same day Andrea's body was discovered, officers located Gabriel Esparza at his workplace in Lakewood, California. He was swiftly arrested with little to no issue. During his arrest, officers recovered a weapon believed to have been used in the crime. The rifle, found in Esparza's vehicle, was sent for ballistic testing to confirm its use in the shooting at Penn Park. Esparza's 2013 white Toyota Tacoma, which matched up to what was seen by witnesses and cameras, was also seized as evidence. Behavioral analysts were brought in to develop a profile of Esparza. They wanted to figure out Esparza's potential motivations and psychological state. He was subjected to intensive interrogation. Esparza initially attempted to argue that he was innocent, but after the mounting physical evidence and inconsistencies in his statements, it became clear that he wasn't getting out of this unscathed. Investigators also analyzed Esparza's digital footprint, including his phone records, social media activity, and any digital communications. This revealed patterns in his behavior and movements leading up to the crime. Phone records placed Esparza at the scene of the crime and tracked his movements to and from Moreno Valley. Gabriel Esparza faced a series of severe charges. This included the murder of Andrea, the attempted murder of her boyfriend, kidnapping, assault with intent to commit rape, kidnapping to commit rape, and attempted forcible rape. It stated that Esparza provided a confession at some point to his legal team. However, they refused to reveal the specifics around it, but it was revealed that Esparza had no relation to either Andrea or her boyfriend. He had simply chosen to attack this couple because it was convenient. Furthermore, when investigators questioned Esparza on what happened after he had reached the open fields, it was shared that Esparza attempted to and do other things to Andrea, but for whatever reason, he simply chose to abandon her. This was possibly due to the immense amount of stress he was under, causing him to be unable to quote-unquote perform. Medical officials are also unclear on whether or not these attempts were made while Andrea was still alive or after she had already succumbed to her wounds. During Gabriel Esparza's initial court appearance, he was formally charged with the aforementioned crimes and special circumstances. He pleaded not guilty. Since this event occurred pretty recently, this legal battle could go on for at least a year or two before we receive news of an official sentence. There are also theories that Esparza's defense may be building a case to argue that he is mentally unfit to stand trial and doesn't understand the crime he committed. All of Esparza's friends and family could not believe that he could have committed such a terrible act of violence. He had no criminal history and came from a pretty well-off family. His father was even a captain at the Los Angeles County Fire Department. The rifle that Esparza used wasn't even registered under him, but instead a family member. During interviews with Andrea's parents, the family expressed their heartbreak and disbelief over the loss of Andrea. Eduardo, her father, emphasized the family's resolve to see justice served. The Whittier community and beyond showed immense support for the Vasquez family following Andrea's abduction and murder. Vigils and memorials were organized to honor her memory, with many community members participating in demanding justice for Andrea. One of the notable vigils was held shortly after Andrea's body was discovered. Hundreds of people gathered, holding candles and sharing memories of Andrea. The most recent update I could find stated that Gabriel Esparza is still being held without bail. The case of Colleen Stan, often referred to as the girl in the box, remains one of the most disturbing cases to this day due to its extreme levels of physical and psychological abuse. Over the course of 7 years, Colleen endured extreme confinement, torment, and abuse in various forms. Colleen's story began with an innocent decision to hitchhike. Nowadays, we recognize this as wildly unsafe, but back in the 1970s, this was a common mode of travel, especially for young people. However, this decision led her into the hands of Cameron and Janice Hooker. On the surface, these two looked pretty normal. By 1977, Colleen was living in Eugene, Oregon, a college town known for its progressive values and beautiful natural surroundings. At the age of 20, she was working and living independently. Colleen's decision to hitchhike was made in order to get to a friend's birthday party in Northern California on May 19, 1977. She had successfully hitchhiked several times before without incident, making her more confident that it was safe. That day, Colleen had already accepted several rides that took her near Red Bluff, California. As she waited for her next ride, a blue van pulled up with a seemingly friendly couple inside, Cameron and Janice Hooker. Inside was also their baby, which gave an impression of safety, and Colleen felt reassured that she was in good hands. The addition of the baby was a calculated move by the Hookers. They knew that having it along, their victims instantly felt that they were in safe hands. Cameron Hooker, born in 1953, was known to be a deeply disturbed individual with a history of sadistic fantasies and behaviors. His wife, Janice, born in 1956, had been complicit in his activities, often out of fear and manipulation. Cameron had a dominant personality and exerted control over Janice from the early days of their relationship. Janice had endured years of abuse herself, which made her a participant in Cameron's plans, partly due to her own victimization and partly as a means of self-preservation. The couple had moved to Red Bluff, California, where Cameron worked at a local lumber mill. In public, they appeared to be a normal family, but behind closed doors, Cameron let loose on his sadistic fantasies. He had constructed a series of devices and had meticulously planned the abduction of a victim to fulfill his twisted visions. Colleen Stan would become the unfortunate target of these plans. Shortly after Colleen got into the van, the atmosphere changed dramatically. Cameron Hooker drove to a secluded area, pulled out a knife, and forced Colleen into a specially constructed wooden head box. This 20-pound device was designed to immobilize her head, deprive her of sensory input, and muffle her screams. It had air holes to ensure she could breathe, but it effectively cut her off from the outside world. Cameron had been working hard on this device for a long time. He had crafted it to be an instrument of both physical confinement and psychological terror. As they drove back to their home in Red Bluff, Colleen hopelessly struggled to break free. Upon arriving at the Hooker's home, Colleen was introduced to a brutal regime of torture. Cameron immediately began her conditioning. One of the first things he did was place her in a coffin-like box under the couple's bed. This box, in which Colleen would spend up to 23 hours a day, was part of Cameron's elaborate system to break her will and ensure her compliance. The confinement was not only physically uncomfortable, but also mentally debilitating. Deprived of light, sound, and freedom of movement, Colleen's sense of time and reality began to warp, making her more susceptible to Cameron's control. During the rare occasions when Colleen was allowed out of the box, she was subjected to further abuse and manipulation. Cameron used various torture devices, including whips, chains, and clamps, to inflict pain and assert his dominance. The physical abuse was relentless, but it was the psychological manipulation that truly broke her spirit. Colleen became completely dependent on her captors for basic needs like food, water, and permission to use the bathroom, which further eroded her sense of self-worth and autonomy. Cameron and Janice's kids were told that Colleen was a live-in nanny as they grew older. After a while of keeping Colleen in his presence, Cameron introduced the concept of the company. This was a made-up group that Cameron claimed to be omnipresent. They could track Colleen, listen to her conversations, and would not hesitate to eliminate her family if she tried to escape. Colleen was severely beaten up by this point, so she believed every word that Cameron spoke. Cameron reinforced the existence of the company through staged scenarios and fake documents. He would show Colleen forged letters and papers purportedly from the company, and even staged phone calls and visits from supposed agents. This elaborate deception truly made Colleen believe that any attempt to escape or disobey Cameron would result in severe consequences. Furthermore, he alternated between kindness and cruelty, creating a cycle of hope and despair that kept her off balance. Sometimes he would grant her small freedoms or rewards, only to abruptly take them away, reinforcing her sense of powerlessness and dependence on him. On top of all of this, Colleen was also frequently sexually assaulted. Cameron forced her to sign a slavery contract, symbolizing her total submission and servitude. She was required to address Cameron as master and Janice as ma'am. As I mentioned briefly earlier, Cameron would occasionally give Colleen rewards. One of the most shocking examples of this was a visit to her family in 1981. 4 years into her situation, Cameron allowed Colleen to visit her family, posing as her boyfriend. During this visit, Colleen was too terrified to reveal her true situation, fearing that group known as the Company. Her family, while happy to see her, noticed her withdrawn behavior but did not press her for details, fearing that doing so might drive her away again. Janice Hooker's role in Colleen's captivity was rather complex. Initially, she complied with Cameron's actions out of fear. Janice had been subjected to Cameron's abusive control for years before Colleen's abduction, and her compliance was a means of self-preservation. However, over time, Janice's guilt grew and she began to question her participation in Cameron's sadistic plans. After 7 years of captivity, Colleen Stan's escape began with a moment of conscience from Janice Hooker. Over time, Janice's guilt over her involvement in Colleen's abduction and torture had grown unbearable. She had been a victim of Cameron Hooker's manipulations and abuse herself, which initially kept her compliant. However, Janice eventually sought advice from a minister who encouraged her to leave Cameron and to help Colleen escape. In August 1984, Janice finally took decisive action. She revealed to Colleen that the omnipresent and threatening organization known as the Company was a complete fabrication created by Cameron to control her. Janice then drove Colleen to a bus station and gave her money to contact her family. Colleen called her father, who arranged for funds to be transferred to her so she could get home. This moment marked the end of Colleen's physical captivity, but she had to live with deep psychological scars. She was deeply traumatized and influenced by Janice's pleas to give Cameron a chance to reform. Janice, who had assisted in Colleen's escape, begged her not to go to the authorities, claiming she could help Cameron change. A few months later, Janice realized that Cameron was beyond redemption and could not be reformed. Understanding the gravity of her husband's actions and perhaps driven by her own need for absolution, Janice went to the authorities in November 1984. She provided a full confession of the kidnapping, torture, and sexual assault that Colleen had endured. Janice's confession was critical because it included not only details of Colleen's captivity, but also suspicions that Cameron had previously murdered another woman, Marie Elizabeth Spanhake, who had disappeared in 1976. Although these suspicions were serious, Cameron was never charged with Spanhake's murder due to a lack of evidence. With Janice's testimony and confession, the police acted quickly to arrest Cameron Hooker. The arrest marked the beginning of a highly publicized legal battle. Cameron was charged with multiple felonies, including kidnapping and assault. The trial of Cameron Hooker attracted significant media attention and became a landmark case due to its disturbing nature. Both Colleen and Janice testified against Cameron during the trial. Colleen's testimony was crucial in detailing the extent of her captivity, the physical and psychological abuse, and the methods Cameron used to control her. Janice's testimony corroborated Colleen's experiences and added additional insight into Cameron's manipulative and sadistic behaviors. Janice's role was nuanced. She was both a victim and a participant in the crimes. Her testimony was the main factor in breaking down the defense's argument that Colleen was consenting to all of this. The defense attempted to argue that Colleen had opportunities to escape and did not take them, suggesting that this was some level of consent. They pointed to instances where Colleen was allowed to visit her family and interact with others, arguing that she could have sought help during these times. However, this argument was firmly rejected by the jury. The psychological control Cameron exerted over Colleen, including the creation of the Company and the use of fear and manipulation, clearly demonstrated that her compliance was a result of intense coercion and not true consent. The jury found Cameron Hooker guilty on multiple counts. The judge sentenced him to over 100 years in prison. Colleen Stan faced a long and challenging journey to recovery after her escape. The psychological trauma inflicted by 7 years of captivity, manipulation, and abuse could not be understated. However, with the support of her family and extensive therapy, Colleen began to rebuild her life. Over time, she was able to reclaim her sense of self and autonomy, which had been stripped away during her captivity. She eventually married and had a daughter, which are significant milestones marking her success in finding some level of normalcy. Colleen also pursued higher education, earning a degree in accounting. She chose to use her experiences to help others, becoming an advocate for abused and kidnapped women. By sharing her story, Colleen aimed to raise awareness about the realities of kidnapping and abuse, as well as the complex psychological dynamics that keep victims from escaping or seeking help. Her advocacy work involved speaking engagements, participation in support groups, and collaboration with organizations dedicated to helping victims of abuse. Her story has inspired many and has become a powerful tool for educating the public and supporting other survivors.